Okay, hello everybody. I'm happy to introduce the 18 Urban Future Young Researcher Lunch. This video conference is organized by one of the LabX cutting group oldest, which is called V3T for Town, Transport, Tourism and Territories. It also connected with an important research project dedicated to the mega events like Olympic Games. Since the 90s, on the Barcelona Olympic project, urban studies are focused on the social and urban consequences of the games. The Olympic Games are unique opportunities to develop sport and transport infrastructures, but also to create or renew urban peripheries or outskirts. So that I'm very glad to welcome Gustavo Lopes dos Santos from the University of Lisbon. He's talk about his research topics about the Olympic Agenda 2020 and the effects of it on urban planning. Before giving voice to Marie de la Place to make the introduction, the scientific introduction of this meeting, I would like to thank Laura Bourriez, who coordinated the organization of this meeting, Pierre-Olaf Schutt and Marie de la Place, who will do the introduction moderation of course. And of course, I thank Gustavo Lopes dos Santos, who accept our invitation. Marie, if you want.
Okay, many thanks, Loic. I just perhaps try to share my my PowerPoint. Is it okay for you?
Yes, okay, it's okay.
Okay, so just a few words to speak about the research of the research group City, Tourism, Transport and Territories. As you know, perhaps there is an observatory for research on mega event we have created in 2018, and in this context, there is some research which are shared between the Observatory for Research on Mega Events and the research group City, Tourism, Transport and Territory. So I will just present the linked between ORM and this research group concerning the Olympic game of Paris 2024. As you know, there was a previous Olympic Games in Paris in 1924. There is also numerous failed bids for Paris, as you can see on the slide. And for 2024, Paris won the bid. And as you know, there you have the dates of the game and Paralympic game in Paris 2024. The Paris 24 Olympic game is a mega event in terms, of course, of sports, with many athletes participating to the game and also to the Paralympic game. But as Loic says, there is also an important consideration concerning the Olympic and Paralympic village, the building of the Olympic and Paralympic village. It's a mega event in terms of media coverage with 3.5 billion of expected telespectators and numerous journalists. And it's also a mega event in terms of economic impact. There is many evaluation of the impact of Olympic Games, and this kind of evaluation can be discussed because it's very difficult to know before the game what will be the economic impacts of the game. But it's clear that this Olympic game is a very important mega event for Paris, even if the building, the venue which will be built will be only will not be very important, because there is only 5 new venues in Paris Île-de-France, 4 in Seine-Saint-Denis and 1 in Paris. But it is a very important mega event. It is an important mega event with different stakes. I will not go very deep on these different stakes. You can see on the slide the different stakes of Paris 2024. There is, of course, some stakes in terms of sport and in terms of sport practices, but Pierre Olaf will speak very well of this on this topic, and I don't speak on this. There is also different stake concerning environmental issue. One environmental issue is to build the city of 2050. It is the willingness of Solideo. There is also many stakes concerning innovation. Innovation, for instance, to build the city, how to build a city with sustainable concern. There is also many stakes concerning image and attractiveness of the city due to the Olympic.
Professor, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your slides are blocked, and we're not seeing the full screen. We are still in the first slide.
I don't know why. Do you see the slide?
Yeah,
yes?
now it is, yeah.
Okay, but I don't know if the next slide will, so it's not very important. As you can see on this slide, there is many stakes concerning Olympic Games. And of course, the Observatory of Research on Mega Events is working on numerous stakes, and the research group City, Tourism, Transport and Territory is also working on some stakes. And in particular, you can see the next slide?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And in particular, the stakes that you can see on this slide. So it's a common research between the Observatory on Research of Mega Events and the research group, City, Tourism, Transport and Territory. We have four themes. We investigate in the linked between Observatory and the research group, that is tourism and Olympic Games and image of host cities, Olympic Games and transportation and mobility issues, and the issue of the sustainability of the Olympic Games. So there is numerous publications concerning these 4 topics, concerning tourism, concerning the image, concerning mobility, transportation, mobility, and sustainable development. There is a numerous research conducted with Gustavo Lopez dos Santos. So I will give the floor to Gustavo to present this research.
Thank you, Professor. I will try to share my screen. Right. Are you seeing the screen?
Yes, it's okay for us.
And the full screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, and it is moving, right?
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so bonjour, everyone. My name is Gustavo Lopes dos Santos, and I'm a PhD student in territorial engineering. in Instituto Superior Técnico, University of Lisbon, working in the Center for Innovation in Territory, Urbanism and Architecture. And I am funded by Fundação para a Ciência e a Tecnologia in Portugal. Thank you so much for this invitation and the opportunity to share my work, and thank you for being here. Please let me introduce my supervisors, Professor Marie de Laplace, who just introduced me, from Gustavo Eiffel University, and from my own university, Professors Beatriz Condessa and Fernando Nunes da Silva. So today I'm going to present only a part of my thesis, and this specific part, this project, is also funded by the Olympic Foundation for Culture and Heritage of the IOC, which stands for International Olympic Committee, through the Olympic Studies Center PhD program. So I was awarded with 1-year grant during 2022, which means that I am at the end of this project and I must finish it until the end of the year, although I would certainly like to have a bit more time. The project is titled The Effects of Olympic Agenda 2020 on Urban Planning for Mega Events, assessing case studies of future Olympic Games and outlining new recommendations. So what is this, the Olympic Agenda 2020? Let's have a little bit of context. So as you may know, for decades, the Olympic Games have been used by host cities as a tool to boost the city's international profile for place marketing and globalization, and resorting to large urban regeneration projects to attract capital. And they are also used by cities to accelerate the implementation of certain urban projects, many of them that were shelved for years for many different reasons. However, only recently, hosts started showing some awareness to align these Olympic projects with their own city plans and long-term development goals. And some have done it greatly, largely contributing for the city's development. But unfortunately, legacies of the games are never entirely successful, and even the most successful hosts have generated some negative side effects. And others have been much less successful, and sustainability has been a key issue and a source of problems. So economic sustainability, since over the years, public budgets for the games significantly increased with huge opportunity costs, and with many sports facilities and other infrastructures becoming white elephants, so with high maintenance costs and without the post-games use. Regarding environmental sustainability, it has been worse in the past, but because since the 90s, there has been a significant increase of awareness, but nowadays, as we will see, it is still relevant. And also very important is social sustainability, as a lot of editions showed problems regarding human rights and especially generating displacement of low-income communities. And for these reasons, public opposition against the games grew and global anti-Olympic movements rose. Nowadays, these contestation groups are highly organized and have been somewhat successful in highlighting the negative characteristics of the games. This opposition, it was the reason for several bid withdrawals in the last Olympic cycles, leaving very few candidates for the bidding cycles of the last decade. And this is where Olympic Agenda 2020 comes in. So to change or to be changed, that is the question. And this is the motto of Olympic Agenda 2020, which is a radical policy developed and adopted in 2014 by the IOC, with the objective of changing the way the games are organized to enhance its credibility, sustainability, and youth appeal. It consists of 40 recommendations. They are very broad in context, affecting many different fields of research. They were to be implemented until 2020 and affected a little bit the games that were already being prepared at the time, but especially those starting from Paris 2024 onwards. And this is where my project is focused. The main objective is to analyze the implementation of Olympic Agenda, see what next host cities are doing, and identify flaws and difficulties in this implementation to develop new recommendations to further enhance the achievement of the goals of Olympic Agenda. So I'll show you the methodology of my project. It is divided in 3 parts, further divided in stages and guided by secondary research questions. Part 1 is a document analysis, part 2 is case studies analysis, and 3 is research by design. So part 1, it resorted to a document analysis to set the context of the research and provide data regarding the implementation of Olympic Agenda. So it started by a document selection to answer the question, what did the IOC commit to do. So I used the Olympic World Library to search for documents, which is the official repository of the Olympic Studies Center, where all the official Olympic publications are. And I only applied 3 filters. So author, the IOC, publication date from 2014 to 2021, and language English. So then I excluded documents that were about other fields of research by looking at titles and abstracts. And then I segregated the documents and realized that there were 3 main types of documents. So the IOC policies, which were strategic documents derived from Olympic agenda and with specific objectives, that is, they clearly describe goals of the IOC and strategies to achieve them. Then the IOC regulations, that are documents that regulate the Olympic movement, including the organization of the Games. In each of them has several versions because they are modified through time, and such modifications might derive from the IOC policies. And in that case, they represent the implementation of Olympic agenda in the legal framework of the Olympic movement. And finally, the third group are informative documents, which consisted of reports, guides about several issues, including the implementation of the policies. But they do not present policies or goals, but rather information about they are being pursued or their results. So they proved important as complementary information, but were also excluded. Then I needed to add or remove certain versions of the documents for reasons of coherency or simplification. And I also did an active search throughout the entire project to find new documents, but these were all considered to be informative documents. So the output was these documents over here: the Olympic Agenda 2020, the Sustainability Strategy, the Legacy Strategic Approach, the New Norm, 9 versions of the Olympic Charter, 5 of the Code of Ethics, 6 of the Host City Contract Principles, and 4 of the Host City Contract operational requirements. Please note that all of them are structured by topics, which facilitated the analysis and the coding in the next stage. So, for example, Olympic Agenda is structured by recommendations, while the Olympic Charter is structured by rules and bylaws to rules. And I created abbreviations for these for simplification. Then with these documents, I conducted a thematic analysis guided by the question, how does this relate with the territory? The objective was to create themes, which I called urban-related reforms. And these reforms, they group all strategies and actions by the IOC related with the same topics. So they are objective and clear so that we can say the IOC wants to do specifically this, or the IOC wants to do specifically that. And I started by extracting the information that was relevant because, as I told you, the documents address many issues that are not related to this field of study. Here you have an example of a change in the regulation of the Olympic Charter. For the case of the policies, because they are new and directly generated by the Olympic agenda, all contents were considered. But for the case of the regulations, the analysis only paid attention to meaningful modifications from version to version. And that is because the influence of the policies in these regulations can only be identified by looking at their changes, because these regulations already existed before Olympic Agenda 2020. Then I started coding these extractions, and to associate them, this was done using the MaxQDA software. And after a first round of coding, I looked at all the themes that I coded and started grouping them by issues. And here I found 5 main groups of codes, which I called the urban-related objectives. That is, the broad urban objectives that the IOC wanted when implementing the Olympic agenda. 3 of them are indirect. That is, they don't have a direct impact on the territory, but have impact on other things that then have direct impacts on the territory, like governance, for example. I think the titles are very self-explanatory. So ensure best practices, improve the governance system, rely on specialized knowledge. These are the indirect ones. And the direct contain urban-related costs and enhance urban sustainability. Then the remaining steps were iterative processes where I split or merged extractions of codes, renamed them, associated them, created definitions, etc., until I reached the final format. So these are 22 reforms that I identified, grouped by 5 objectives. And the numbers that you see in the circles is the number of codes in each reform or objective. So we can see a lot of importance put on governance and also sustainability, more than, for example, in reducing or containing costs. And here is an example of one of the reforms, representativity, which is one of the smallest ones in the governance objective. You have a definition and then all the codes that serve to build the reform. So with the reforms as an input, it was time to analyze the case studies to answer the question, how are hosts not fulfilling the commitments? And the word not here is because the objective was to correct problems of the Olympic agenda, but it does not mean that everything that the hosts are doing is not aligned with the Olympic agenda, okay? So I chose two case studies, Paris 2024 and Milano Cortina 2026, because they will be the first Summer and Winter Olympics to fully benefit from Olympic agenda. And they are also the next editions and the ones that are further advanced. And also because I had contacts in other research centers that were studying these cases, namely Gustave Eiffel University in Paris and Politecnico di Milano. So the first stage was done by exploratory research aimed at generating formal hypotheses, not clearly defined, but meant to build a research agenda regarding the implementation of Olympic agenda to test these hypotheses in the case studies. The first step was to analyze the game's concept through the candidature files. Then I followed the updates regarding the preparations and changes in the concept through online news. And this was actually the main source for the generation of hypotheses, because as you can imagine, the candidature files were developed to be in line with the Olympic agenda, and they represent plans, not actually implementations. So the difficulties and the problems, they appear mostly during the actual preparation, not so much on the planning. And finally, I compared what was going on these case studies with the reforms that I developed before to build this research agenda. So I came up with a lot of hypotheses. Each of them relates with a certain decision and usually with a venue or infrastructure. But there are so many, and to be honest, I haven't organized yet the complete list. So I decided to choose 4 venues to show you examples of hypotheses related with them. So the Aubervilliers swimming pool and the Media Village for Paris 2024, and the Eugenio Monti Sliding Center in Cortina d'Ampezzo, and the Ice Stadium in Baselga di Pinet for Milan Cortina 2026. Please note that from now on until the end of the presentation, everything that you will see in blue relates to Paris 2024 and in red to Milan Cortina 2026. So the Aubervilliers swimming pool, it will be a training venue for Paris 2024. And the candidature of Paris said that this was an already planned construction. So the plan was to build the swimming pool somewhere in Fort d'Aubervilliers, the blue line, which is an already developed plot, but abandoned. So public consultation for the swimming pool was done for this project. And after, the location was changed to the red line, which includes community gardens, so a green area. And meanwhile, a project for residential neighborhoods started being developed within the blue area. So people from the gardens protested and went to court, and they won, and the project had to be changed. They reduced the footprint, but part of the gardens had been already destroyed. And this reform here, constructions, includes the following codes. Prioritize the use of previously developed or degraded land over greenfield sites, and integrate the potential consequences of climate change. So they are doing exactly the opposite, prioritizing green sites over developed land, and not only disregarding climate change, but also contributing for it, as it has been proved that the gardens are a hotspot in Paris and very important for temperature control. So the hypothesis here is the project of Aubervilliers swimming pool does not respect the norms for new constructions. Here is the project for the Media Village in Duny, Saint-Saint-Denis, being built in the red line. The green line is Parc Georges Valbon, which is a Natura 2000 protected area. The area of the Media Village itself is not protected, but in the development plans, it was marked for the development of a green area. The reform for legacy planning says, ensure that the game significantly contribute to the fulfillment of the host city's long-term development plans. To be fair, this code is from the contract for Milano Cortina 2026, but the idea exists in other codes. I just chose this one because it said exactly how I wanted. So the hypothesis is the project of the Media Village is not compatible with the long-term plans of the city, and it is actually changing it. Another example for the Media Village is the Reform Resources, and it says, provide a media village only in cases where the local infrastructure of the host city does not have sufficient capacity. And this word "only" was added to this text after Olympic Agenda 2020. So at the beginning, the IOC questioned the need to build a media village, saying that the hotel infrastructure of Paris was enough. And with COVID and budget cuts, the media village has been reduced more than half, so proving that it was overdimensioned. So the hypothesis here is the media village was not necessary for the games. This one is very simple. This is the sliding center in Cortina d'Ampezzo, used for the 1956 Winter Olympics. It was working until 2008, and then it was closed because it needed maintenance. In the candidature dossier, it was classified as an existing facility needing permanent works, although I think it is more of a permanent work begging to exist again. And the IOC suggested that instead of rebuilding it for Milano Cortina 2026, they could use the existing sliding center in Innsbruck in Austria. And this suggestion aligns with the reform locations. There were several codes supporting this hypothesis, but I chose only this one. For the specific case of monofunctional venues, which are venues that serve only one purpose, which is the case, competitions should be moved to the most suitable existing venue, even if located outside the host city or country. So the hypothesis is there were alternative locations for the sliding center, avoiding constructions. Also, it has been estimated that the sliding center will have operational losses around 200 million euros per year after the games. And the reform construction says that the construction of new permanent venues or infrastructure shall only be considered on the basis of sustainable legacy plans. So the hypothesis is the sliding center does not have a viable legacy plan. And finally, the reform legacy planning says the venues and infrastructure games legacy plans shall include the strategy for covering potential operational losses. And these costs are not even potential, they are actually estimated. So the hypothesis is the legacy plans does not account for the recovery of operational losses. Finally, this is a nice rink that already exists in Baselga di Piné, that according to the candidature dossier is an existing venue requiring some permanent works. I'm going to show you how it is right now. So yeah, the construction will cost more than 60 million euros and is mostly to build a roof because the International Federation requires an indoor venue. Its capacity will be reduced after the event, but for the games, it will host 5,000 people, which means that the entire population of Baselga di Piné can fit there. So it is at least an inclusive project. So we've seen this before. The legacy plan does not seem viable, but I want to introduce to you another reform, which is the requirements, which has a very important piece of code that says the IOC and the international federations will ensure that venue requirements at the Olympic Games do not exceed those of each sports world championship. And you know, Baselga has hosted the World Championship before, the Junior World Championship, as well as the European ones. And the World Championship of 2018 was hosted at the Olympic Stadium in Amsterdam, which is outdoor. So the hypothesis here is the requirements for the Olympic speed skating events are exceeding those of the World Championships. And this is actually happening for some other cases in both Milan Cortina 2026 and in Paris 2024. Then with this hypothesis, it was time for confirmatory research to understand why did hosts take certain decisions. I did some field visits. I visited more than 100 sites related with the 2 case studies, 37 nights in Paris and 38 in Italy, mostly in Milan, but also in Verona, Cortina d'Ampezzo, and in the Valtellina cluster. I produced 2 reports about these visits, so you can consult them online if you're interested. Please allow me to say hello to some friends I met during these visits and who did some of these visits with me and are here in the room today with us. Bonjour, Alexia. Hola, Philippe. I also did some interviews. In total, 23 interviews, or expect to do 23 because I'm still waiting on 2 of them. This includes 28 individuals. Here, they are organized by groups. So Group A are the event owners, in this case, the IOC, which are the 2 interviews that I'm still waiting for the answers. But I'm working with the Olympic Studies Center to get them. Group B are the event organizers, and this includes the organizing committees of both Paris 2024 and Milano Cortina 2026, and also Solideo, which is the local Olympic delivery authority for Paris 2024. The one for Milano Cortina did not reply to my requests. Group C are governmental bodies created or already existing with specific responsibilities within the games. These include local, supralocal, municipal, and national governmental bodies, and they were super difficult to guarantee. You have 6 entities, but I contacted several times, more than 20, and did not get answers from most of them, especially in Italy, I must say. And finally, groups D and E. D are environmental associations, and group E are civic groups specifically created to oppose the games or specific games-related urban projects. And after, I analyzed the interviews in order to validate the hypothesis. So let's have a look at some results regarding the case that I showed you. I won't tell you to which case it relates nor what interview for reasons of confidentiality. But before, please let me say that again, that these quotes are in no way meant to criticize the organizers. They look like it because my project is about problems and I selected what interested me for this case. But it is not meant at all to remove the credits for what I think it's a remarkable work from the organizers and the IOC in trying to effectively changing for better. I think they are pioneers in changing these problematic practices involved in mega events and that they are doing a great job, but not always everything is possible at once. So I will read some of these quotes. These first ones are from interviews in Group B, the event organizers. The decision was not taken by us. It was the municipality. We were just there to say, okay, we can contribute to finance, but we didn't design it. It has been a difficult situation because we were accused to do it. And another one, I then understand that the IOC said, no, don't do this, don't do that, don't do whatever, but it has been voted by them. So during the evaluation, they had already signaled that that would be a main problem and the main criticism, even because these are the 2 main white elephants that the IOC has around the world. Another 2 here, no, I think it is not possible to guarantee a sustainable legacy for it. We know this, we try to avoid this project. We have to organize the Olympic Games, and unfortunately, we have no ownership of the entire project. And lastly, very honestly, I'm not an engineer and it's not my kind of expertise, but it seems to me over exaggerated looking into the benchmarks of previous venues and facilities of this type. A few examples from governmental bodies. It is certainly the project that wouldn't have been possible without the games. Only the exceptional case of the games allowed to unlock this situation. And another one, we didn't maybe give good explanation to the population. Maybe we should have explained better why and what was the economic equation, and maybe make public consultation about that. And finally, one from environmental associations. I think it is also a matter of putting a landmark on what you want to do as a civil society, because these Olympics were approved as being sustainable and now the plans are being changed. Finally, civic groups, even the IOC said it's not necessary. They don't even know if the construction will be finished before the games. So it is a pure operation, you know, and now the promoter decided to privatize this space, which was maintained by taxpayers' money for decades. They can use the Olympic logo to enforce exceptional procedure. In every aspect, this cannot be. So I remind you that all of these statements are related with questions that I did about these 4 cases, okay? Then also with the help of MaxQDA software, I grouped the hypotheses related to both case studies that were considered to share common grounds. more or less like we did here now. The objective of this was to identify situations that were considered to have similar decision-making routes that are predicted to lead to similar outcomes or that need to be addressed in similar ways. And these represent what I called the glitches of the Olympic agenda. And then with these glitches or inefficiencies, whatever you may call it, the final part of the methodology is research by design, with a policymaking approach to try to answer the question, what can be done about it? And also aimed at developing new recommendations that can potentially contribute to help achieving the goals of Olympic agenda. And you know that feeling when you're watching a movie and you're excited to see the ending, but it turns out that the movie has an open ending and you will have to wait for the sequel because the second movie is not done yet. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for your time and your attention.
Thank you very much, Gustavo, for this very clear presentation and stimulating also. I will perhaps Pierre-Olaf, if you want to introduce the debates between us and Gustavo.
Yes, thank you very much for this presentation. I appreciate, even if the topic is quite usual in Olympic studies, it's still necessary to open it and to discuss about that. It's a very whole debate, because if we look at, I remember Pierre de Coubertin said in the early years of the 20th century that we don't need to make this event so big or to have so much expenses to organize the Olympic Games. And you show quite clearly that the IOC try to reduce or to avoid all this expansion of the games, which are too much expensive and not sustainable. And that's why they try to make some to change the rules. And I wanted to mention also the PhD thesis written by Karina Mukono about the organization split by 2 or more countries in sport mega event, which is of course a very important topic due to this idea of to avoiding white elephants. But the problem is bigger. In the past, it was mainly focusing on sport venues. Now we have also the problem with the Olympic Village or the Media Village, which is housing. So without the same problem, because sport venues are not used enough, even if they are too big for a sport event. And when you mentioned the requirement of the International Federation for World Championship, usually a lot of sport venues has only 2 or 3 days of competition with the World Championship per year. So even if they are at the size of the International Federation, it's usually not enough for the financial balance of the sport venues. And the question of housing is also an important question due to the problem of the choice of the place that you mentioned, and you give some good example. And also we know a lot about with the case of London about the phenomenon of gentrification, who are not really sustainable in social aspects, and this is a very important fear in Saint-Denis particularly. So we have a lot of stakes mentioned in the introduction by Mary, and this is a very whole problem and still relevant today, because I think only 2 months last summer, the IOC published a report about the use of the sport venues of all the previous edition of the Olympic Games, and they mentioned that 85% of them are still used. So there's always an effort for maybe greenwashing. You can discuss about that, but to try to be more sustainable, but it's not achieved. And you show quite clearly that the host cities are also responsible for that, because it's largely for a large part their decisions to create and to build some new things, and they also know the problem at the beginning, but they took these decisions. In France, the Cour des Comptes mentioned quite very early that the aquatic center will be a financial problem for the Olympics, but they did it, and the private-public partnership is largely more expensive than the provision of the cost. So I wanted to try to not be too long, but we have different questions. But if I follow your presentation and mention and your idea that finally the local organization are maybe the more responsible of these expenses, because most of the people can understand that there will be some problems, some overcost, or some problem of sustainability with these choices. So I wonder if you think that the local organizer only do these facilities and equipment for other objective than the games. So objective of to develop their cities or their country or their region, or and in the same time, I wonder if there is also the question of the competition between the host cities, because all the host city want, during the bidding time, they all want to make the best offer to be elected for the games, and the IOC changed the system, the process to be elected, and now it's more cooperation, and by this way they elected Brisbane for the Olympic in 2032. And in this case, can we expect to have less expenses for oversized sport venues and not sustainable building projects? Do you think the change of the process to elect the host city will change this situation? And can we expect more sustainability since 2032 and not 2024?
Regarding your first question, I wouldn't say like local governments. I would say like the national government. So what I mean is all levels: the national, the regional, the municipal, the local. Yeah, so they have a great responsibility within the delivery of the games, and there are some things that make it mandatory for them to follow Olympic agenda and etc. But they have completely different interests from the interests of the organizing committees, which have completely different interests from the interests of the IOC. So this is kind of a mix, because the IOC has a brand to defend, has a brand to, let's say, sell. And the local organizers, they will have the games and they will not have the games after. So obviously they want to do something that is viewed as a great innovation or so, but they are also interested in certain aspects that maybe the IOC wants to avoid. Like, for example, there is a statement there that says clearly that the Olympic Games were the only way to move forward with this project, because it was stalled before. And that is actually a good thing of the Olympic Games if it is well applied. I'm not saying here that any case that I showed was not a good example or a bad example, but it really depends on what the organizers want to do and the way that they do that. But I think that there's been a great a lot of advancements with Olympic agenda. Many times you can read that it's all the same, the Olympic agenda is not doing anything. That's not true, absolutely not true, because things are changing and they are trying to change things, honestly, I think. About your second question about the candidature process, that would be something. So the candidature process is also within the reforms that are created. That was something that I wanted to explore, but I will not have time for that. So I don't know a lot about Brisbane. But I can tell that when Brisbane was elected, I felt like they were neglecting Olympic agenda again, because it was kind of the new process that they created for the candidature. In theory, it seems a good practice. So They approach people, the cities that are interested approach them, they collaborate, they talk. If there's more than one candidate, they see what they prefer, they propose directly to them, and then they rearrange the concepts to build something that they think it's better for the objectives of Olympic agenda. The thing with Brisbane that I think it's a step back in Olympic agenda, the election of Brisbane, because there's a lot of things being built for Brisbane. Again, I don't know many things about it, but I know there's a lot of things that they call that were infrastructures and venues that were planned before, but if you search a little bit about it, they were not planned. They just put like that for, like you say, greenwashing. And also because it was elected a lot of time before what was usual, so 11 years before, not 7 like usual. That's also part of the flexibility that they want for this candidature process. But the thing is that there were other interested parties, namely a group of cities, a group of 14 cities in Frankfurt in Germany, that were not to build anything. They were going to use everything, but it's 14 cities. So as you can imagine, the IOC probably didn't like that very much, and they already had a candidature prepared. So I don't know if it's still online, but you could see the candidature, you could see their idea, and at the time you didn't have anything about Brisbane, and all of a sudden Brisbane was elected. So I think it was kind of a way to run away from such a candidature within so many cities. Maybe they have the reasons, maybe they are right, I don't know, but I think this new candidature process is, theoretically, it is better, but I think in practice is shadier, you know.
Thank you for your answer. We have 13 minutes for the questions. Yes, Loïc.
Okay. I will have 3 questions for you, Gustavo. First of them is about the no Olympic social movements or protest. How do you work on it? What kind of sources or documentation or perhaps archives can you mobilize to work on this no Olympic social movements? The second question is about the regulation. Is one of your keywords, if I've understand your proposition. Who regulates for whom? The regulation is by local electees or state governments or perhaps the Olympic committees. And for whom? Is it for working class? Is it for middle class? And of course, after that, the question is the relationship between gentrification and Olympic Games. And the third question is about the case of Aubervilliers that you show us near the Aubervilliers fortress. Actually, they have working class gardens. How can we consider that building a swimming pool, an Olympic swimming pool, is a sustainable project in this case?
About the anti-Olympic movement, I think there is not actually much that can be done about it, because these are people that have extreme ideas. They are ideological. I think there is a difference, and I noted that with the people that I interviewed, there is a difference between people that are actually fighting for something that it's happening to them, and the people that just say, no, Olympics should end, and there's nothing we can do about it. Olympics are bad and they should end. What I also noted is that most of the people from these collectives, let's say, one of the questions that I usually did was if they were fighting against this project, or if they were anti-Olympic. And what most of them said was, at first, I started fighting for my cause, but now I see how the Olympic machine works, and now I'm more of anti-Olympic than only fighting for my cause. About your second question about the regulation, so this was done on purpose. So the regulations that I showed here, they come all from the International Olympic Committee, and I think it is fair to conduct research based on this, because I am assessing what the IOC committed to do. So if I want to assess that, I want to see what the IOC committed to do through their regulations and through their documents. There is no other source that I can search for, and these are done for the entities that are covered, let's say, by these regulations. It's the Olympic movement. So the International Olympic Committee is the head of the Olympic movement. So we talk about what matters for the case: international federations that set the requirements for the venues and the organizing committees of the Olympic Games. But also there is the host city contract here. And when you sign the host city contract, you also sign with the government of the country. And you sign with the city, the country, and you can have other signatories to this contract. Namely, if you have events outside the host city. And even if they don't sign the contract clearly says that the people that sign the contract have to control the other entities that have events. So it applies for everything. Regarding gentrification, however, that is not the thing is, how can you really control that? There are no solutions to control gentrification in any project. So how can the IOC act on that? They acted in regard to displacement, and regulations were changed. Well, the norms that I showed here, some of them are about displacement, but how can you ensure the effects of gentrification? So I also asked questions about gentrification to the stakeholders, and the answer was always, well, we are complying with the French or the Italian law, which is what they have to do. But in my opinion, I think that the games are different from other urban projects, and in this regard, they should be addressed differently. How? I have no idea, but I think they should. And your last question was, can you help me?
It was about Aubervilliers on the working class gardens near the fortress.
What happened in Aubervilliers was that there was a part of the swimming pool. It was not the swimming pool itself. It was the facilities for the services of the swimming pool that were in the area of the garden. And I think people were just saying, well, they are not destroying the gardens for the swimming pool. They are destroying the gardens for solariums and gymnasiums and things that give them money. But one thing that's important to understand is that a swimming pool is not self-sustainable by itself. So it needs to be for the operation. I mean, the operation of the swimming pool is not sustainable. So I think these services are needed to ensure the economic sustainability of the swimming pool. What I don't think it was necessary was to compromise the environmental sustainability for the economic sustainability. So in this case, the swimming pool, and if you see the candidature files of Paris 2024, the swimming pool is in the fortress. It is said that, and the public consultation process was done for the swimming pool in the fortress. So they changed it. The reasons behind that, I don't know, because I could not speak with the municipality. But well, there is a new project being built in the fortress. So I think the reasons are pretty obvious. I don't know. I think here the business as usual compromised a little bit the sustainability, because if the swimming pool would to be built in the fortress, maybe there would be no problems regarding the environment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there other questions? Yeah, Marie?
Yes, just a comment concerning economic sustainability. As you know, the current context is very bad, and there is increasing costs, especially due to inflation rate. And we can, in July, I think there is overrun cost. The cost of Paris 2024 in July was 8 billion point 0.3. So it's more than the previous budget. And I think that at the end of the planning stage, there is also other overrun costs. So what can we say about economic sustainability? I think that Olympic agenda says that there is no overrun cost. It is important that there is no overrun cost. So I think it's not possible today. So how to take into account the current context into the evaluation?
I think it's not possible to remediate now, especially for Paris 2024 and Milano Cortina. What I think it's possible is to try to adapt what we are doing for the future. So to take this as an example and to use this information and this knowledge gathered to prevent or to have strategies for things that we cannot predict in the future in the following Olympic Games. I don't think there's nothing to do now about Paris 2024 and Milano Cortina, of course, and that cost increase is specifically. You can see that very well in Milano Cortina because the budgets were very, very low even for the constructions, but they are increasing substantially, like a lot really. And I think there's one important issue about this is to clearly define what is an operational cost and what is a capital cost. So in this case for Paris 2024, what is the cost of Paris 2024 and what is the cost of Solideo, let's say. And I think the cost of the organizing committee is not a problem because whatever it is not a problem because historically the organizing committees have been able to have a zero balance in the end. So they do not have profits nor losses. And the last Olympic Games actually had profits. So since the implementation of Olympic agenda, there was a little bit of profits, but we're talking about operational. And then we have the capital costs, and the capital costs are under the responsibility of national, local, regional entities. And I think it's a national policy. I think it's difficult even for the IOC to control these issues because it's about the country, it's about the city, it's not about the Olympic movement. So I don't know what can we do to control this.
I think that there is also an increasing cost for operational issue because of security. It's the need. Security is required for the games due to cyber attack, due to issue of ticketing, as we know for the football competition in May in France. There is some problem. So there is operational costs also for the organizing committee, and they are increasing.
But I think they do certain balance. So if you look at Paris 2024, whenever they have an increase in cost, they do something to the venue plan, and they say, let's change this, let's change that. So and then you have the contributions, so the profits from the actual delivery of the Olympic Games. And I think they are very well very well aware of that balance that they need to find. So putting more seats to sell more tickets, so then they can pay for this and for that. I think actually my honest opinion is that the operational cost is not a problem because it is compensated by the event. But I don't research about it, so I don't know. It's just an opinion.
There is also a state guarantee about financial deficit of the organizing committee. So
yeah.
Not only compensated, but there's maybe last question from Roberto.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Gustavo. I'm Roberto Vico. I'm also a researcher in this field. I'm an Italian, but I'm a researcher at São Paulo University. I'm doing a postdoctoral in tourism, and my state case is Paris 2024. Sorry for my English. I have a question for you about tourism. Have you got any information about how many tourists the next Olympic Games expects? And what about projects for tourists also, if there are new areas or zone and infrastructures for tourists? And also another question is about if you have an idea of the perception of local population, if they feel involved or not in the process of organization, and what about the sustainability of social sustainability, if population feel involved or not in the process? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I will maybe, if Professor Marie allows, I will redirect the first two questions to Professor Marie if she has something to say about it, because I don't study tourism. Maybe she has some information, but I don't. Regarding your other questions, I might be a little bit, the information that I have might be a little bit biased, because the people, like the local people that I interviewed were from groups that were contesting. So my feeling is that the population is not involved, but that is because I spoke with people that are actually protesting. So I don't live in France, I don't live in Paris, so I don't have that perception. I know that when I was there, I had Airbnb hosts, and I spoke a little bit with them about these issues, and they said that they rarely hear anything about the Olympics, so they know nothing about what's going on in the Olympics. And your last question was about the social sustainability. So there will always be the problem of gentrification. It's unavoidable, especially for the Olympic Games, in my opinion. What I think is that we need first to address the problem, to address the urban projects for the Olympic Games in different ways that we address other common urban projects. That's the first thing that I think we need to do, because they have different effects. They have amplified effects. And the second is that we must think, what are these special characteristics of the game that make the games special or different for the impact that they have on the society, and also try to see how can we leverage these special characteristics to try to control and mitigate and maybe compensate whatever these special characteristics also create as bad things, you know. So to look at it in the context of the games and see all the characteristics of the games, and what can these characteristics help that in other projects is not possible.
Okay, I'm sorry, but we have to close this meeting. I would like to thank very much Gustavo for this presentation.
Thank you for having me.
And Pierre-Olaf also. You can hear this meeting on replay on the Urban Future website in a few days. The next Young Researcher lunch will be on Monday, the 12th of December. We can hear Pauline Guillemet about its PhD on John Ruskin works, and it will be a lunch proposed by the cutting group Uses of History and Urban Development. So thank you very much for everybody. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.